Hey guys, so today we're going to do our first flip, and I'm going to start with the warm-up question since I'm not with you. Just want to make sure that you have my expectations down pat. The first one says, how many opportunities do you have to go to the restroom during this semester? Remember, you need to keep it extremely limited, especially if you're coming into first period because you should go beforehand, and especially if you're coming into my second period because you have break. So do not ask, please. If you absolutely must go, then you need to sign out on the clipboard sheet over at the wall after you have asked. Please do not go in the middle of instruction. Okay, this would be a transition type of thing to do. 3 ways you can show respect to me and your classmates. Using good manners is always very nice. And being civil is also the way to go. Meaning, ask nicely, find the time if you need to talk to me. That's a good time to do so. That means not in the middle of class or when I'm in the middle of instruction. Raising your hand to speak, I absolutely will not tolerate students talking while I'm talking, because that's ridiculous and I don't allow it. So make sure that you are not doing that with others, or I'm going to address it and you will change your ways. Okay, so being civil, using your manners, listening when others are speaking, those are important. Not to be seen or heard is your phone. And this has been a big change, this year. So you're not allowed to even have it out, period. So if I see it, I take it or ask for it. And then it's your choice whether you give it up or not. If you choose not to, then I will choose to call the office and have you removed. So you do not need to have your phone out at all. You will not see mine. So I expect the same from you. Also, if I ask you to be on your laptops, then be on them on the sites in which I direct. Otherwise, I do not want them out. There is no reason for you to be on a laptop while I'm teaching unless I direct you to do so. All right, so the essential questions. These questions you will need to go back and answer when the video is over. And sometimes I get to them and I do them with you, and sometimes I don't. Either way, it's the expectation that you will take care of it. So the first question is, why would Americans living in the east of the United States risk their lives to travel west under the Homestead Act of 1862? And the next question is, what was the first ever legislation that restricted immigrants from coming into the United States solely based on their race or nationality? So we're going to start today with the Push West, which is the title, of these notes. Push Westward, and we're going to start with the Great Plains Indians. So horse and buffalo are extremely, extremely important during this time period. By 1865, an estimated 15 million bison and buffalo live on the plains, and I'll show you this here in a second. You need to know what they provided these Indians: food, clothing, shelter, and tools to the nearly 250,000 approximate Native Americans living in the West at the time. Now, there are some very, very important points. First, I want to show you the Great Plains map. This is the region we're talking about. This is an important point, so follow this. We are not discussing Eastern Native Americans. You had that discussion in your American 1 course. They are different from the Great Plains Native Americans. These in the East are going to build homes such as like wigwams or longhouses. They're going to fish along the coast. They're going to grow food from the ground to eat. So they'll cultivate crops. They'll hunt, they'll fish, but hunt mainly like deer, rabbit, those types of animals. On the Great Plains, you do not have these Native Americans growing anything. Do you know why? It is because you cannot grow anything out there. The weather is absolute extremes, which I will get into more later, but extreme cold in the winter, extreme heat in the summer. So it's really horrible for trying to grow any kind of crop. at this point. They're also not going to live in wigwams or longhouses, but they live in teepees, which are very, very important. And speaking of, I'll show you one in my living room in a second, how it is structured. So those teepees are extremely important to Native Americans, and they pack them up and they move. They're on the move because they're always hunting buffalo. Okay, so that's a very important point here. They're hunting buffalo for their way of life, and they are not interested in growing food. Buffalo is their life, their food, their shelter, their tools, everything comes from the buffalo. And they value the individual skills of the warrior. They admire the warrior who touches the enemy without harming him. And they do their famous call. They'll like scalp the person. So they grab their hair up here and they cut into the scalp of the person they're scalping. And then they take this piece here and it's got now they'll cut to the skull, you understand? So, and often they would also smash that skull too, so you're going to die. They would cut all this flesh off and this piece of your hair, and they would twirl it around, woo, and put that on their belt. Okay, so these warriors were very, very scary to folks. I'm going to pause this and show you the teepee. Hold on a second. Okay, so here's the teepee about Cullen, and if you notice at the top here, it's totally collapsible, and that's how the real ones were. So he has pillows inside, but literally they would have like inside here a fire, and it would go up, the smoke would come up and out the top hole of the teepee, and this would be covered in buffalo skin. So it was extremely warm in the winter, especially with the fire in the center. And they would also, unlike this one, they would have a flap that literally came over so that they kept out the cold and the snow and everything. As far as collapsible, I wanted you to see that now theirs was a lot more complicated than this one, obviously, but they would just pick this up and go. Like when the buffalo moved, they would collapse their teepees and they would move also. So they are nomads. They are moving from place to place to place with their teepee, following the buffalo wherever the buffalo go. Okay, that was a fun field trip, wasn't it? So now I need to talk about changes as far as the Homestead Act. So we've got Native Americans, right? Here's my little Native American living on the plains. The problem is going to be this dude shows up called White American. So he's going to show up. Notice he's got his gun here, his rifle. He's going to show up because of this Homestead Act. So the Homestead Act of 1862, so the U.S. government, very important, is going to encourage whites to settle on the Great Plains. For $10, you could apply for a homestead, which was a tract of land. You need to know the numbers here. 160 acres this dude's going to get for his $10. And he gets the title if he lives out there 5 years. So for 5 years, he gets 160 acres of land, all for $10. What happens is the U.S. government wants this guy to move out there to get rid of this guy, right, whose head is turned. Okay, they're wanting these two, the white man here, to move out the Native American. I need to switch hands. Okay, so basically he's wanting this guy to move this guy off the plains, pretty much. That's what the U.S. government wanted. You had unassigned land in Oklahoma where settlers were offered to compete for the land by racing on horseback. So these, again, are the white settlers. And basically, the Indian Appropriation Act said no one could occupy that land because it was Indian Territory, remember, under Andrew Jackson, until the president, at this time, 1889, deemed it open. So what's going to happen is all these white guys, when everyone lines up on the line, it's like as far as you can see, people are going to, when the bell rings, they're going to race at noon. They're going to take off running into the land and they're going to stake it. Like they're going to have a big stake and they're going to stake claim in that land with their name on it. What happens is that a lot of those guys left too soon. like during the night before. You're going to read some diary entries of some people that say they're rushing, the bell rang, they're on their horse riding, and they find one spot that has one tree on it and a creek, and they're thrilled because there's no trees out there. It's a plain. And the tree is going to provide shade. It could also be lumber for you. And he's thrilled. He finds this, and there's a guy already camped out there, had already had breakfast, and is cleaning up his breakfast plus his lunch. He's already got everything set up, a tent set up, everything. And the guy's like, how did you get here already? And the guy said, oh, I came when the bell rang. Not so. Not so. He went too soon. He went the night before. So they're called Sooners. They claimed the land illegally. The railroad system after the Civil War, railroads really increased from 35,000 miles in 65 to 193,000 miles in 1900. Also will help run off our man, Mr. Native American, Sioux and Lakota Indians as such. Let me show you a picture of the Oklahoma land rush. I probably need to plug in my laptop. This wanting to go out on me. So I want to show you a couple of pictures. Oh, here's the buffalo I mentioned earlier. You know what he looks like. I have one here in my house somewhere, but I can't find him. And here is Oklahoma land rush picture, which is extremely cool that they have an actual photograph of it, of all these people. The diary entries that I had read, primary sources, said you could see wagons, and you could see some wagons in the background, and men on horses literally miles and miles, as far as you could look out, trying to rush into Oklahoma. And I said some go too soon. Okay, then we have the story of poor old Henry Comstock. And he is going to stake land near Virginia City, Nevada. But that's what they call it out there, Nevada. But he was unable to find gold. He's looking for gold in a get-rich-quick scheme, and he can't find any. So he sells the land in total frustration because he cannot find any gold. And then he realizes, not realizing that it was completely full of pure silver ore. So he sells the land because he doesn't find gold, and he sells it to a group of investors, and they find silver, and then they let everyone know. So it's called the Comstock Lode. A load of silver is found, bringing eager prospectors to Virginia City. So these are the guys with their picks and axes looking for the silver. By 1864, so many people have come into Nevada that it is the 36th state. It generates $230 million, can we say bank here, dollars in revenue. Quick growing towns spring up around these areas known as boom towns because everyone is moving into the get rich quick scheme. Here's Comstock Lode picture showing you the boom town, and you see the mountains of Nevada in the background. So that's kind of what a boom town would look like. They're also going to decide, the mining companies decide this is too much work for these white people because generally white people are lazy. So they decide to hire experienced miners that are foreign born. For example, from China, 1/3 of the miners in the 1860s were Chinese immigrants because they're willing to work hard. And then as time progresses, more and more Chinese come, and the U.S. government says, you know what, we're tired of all these Chinese people. So they passed the first ever legislation to stop a nationality from coming into America called the Chinese Exclusion Act. And you can rest assured that will be on your final exam. Okay, so make sure you know that. As far as ranching, there's a beef shortage in the east because of the Civil War. And so we start moving cattle from Texas up to the north called the Long Drive. And this is the rise of the cowboy way of life. You also have barbed wire fencing that is invented by Joseph Glidden, which hurts the buffalo, cuts off access to the Great Plains. And by 1900, the herds of buffalo have been wiped out. It also means the Native Americans can no longer move around, or their buffalo, which is their source of food. It's going to kill off many Indians. Go back and do your essential questions and then write your summary.